Queen Elizabeth advised Prince Harry to wait a year before marrying Meghan Markle, according to a new biography.
I actually think she was love-bombing him, completely love-bombing him, playing along with all their plans at the time, saying, of course I want to live in South Africa, because he really wants to live in South Africa at the time. She was playing along with that, even viewing houses in South Africa via a WhatsApp group. But actually had no intention of moving to South Africa with him and escaping the press and living a private life.
One of the most plugged-in voices in British royal reporting just dropped a statement that really makes you pause. Charlotte Griffith, editor-at-large of the Mail on Sunday, one of the paper's top insiders when it comes to royal scoops, has come forward with a string of claims about Meghan Markle that feel intense even by royal gossip standards. Griffith alleges that Meghan convinced Harry to rush into marriage, even suggesting she leaned on the pressure of her biological clock to speed things up. She also claims Meghan told Harry she wanted a life in South Africa, even going as far as browsing homes there on WhatsApp while supposedly never planning to live anywhere but California. And the biggest claim of all? Griffith suggests the couple's exit from the UK royal family wasn't some last-minute decision when things got tough, but something mapped out from the very start, long before any public fallout.
Now, you're suggesting that she leveraged or even weaponized her biological clock to marry Harry quickly.
I do think that. It's just my opinion.
Yes,
I think she leveraged anything she'd get her hands on at the time to marry Harry quickly.
Not from the moment things inside the palace got tense, not when pressure started building, but from the very beginning, back when Harry and Meghan were still just dating. Griffith is saying this wasn't a reaction. It was already in motion early on. She also claims Oprah Winfrey's invite to the 2018 royal wedding wasn't just a friendly gesture, it was strategic. According to this version, the goal was to lock in that exclusive interview years later, the one that exploded across the world and became one of the most watched and talked about royal broadcasts in modern history. Take a second and really think about that. If Griffith's account is on point and she's known for not throwing around wild claims, then the whole narrative people believed starts to look very different. This wouldn't be a story about two people falling in love, struggling inside a strict system, and then deciding to walk away. Instead, it points to something much more calculated. A plan already taking shape before the wedding even happened. One where Harry may not have fully seen the bigger picture and where bigger ambitions were quietly steering the direction. And this isn't coming from some random voice on the sidelines, it's coming from someone deeply connected in royal reporting. Charlotte Griffith was once seen by some as being sympathetic toward Harry and Meghan, but after what she's saying now, that label doesn't really stick anymore. The tone has clearly shifted, and the details she's laying out are raising serious eyebrows. So let's break it down properly, because the timing here is everything. Why did the relationship move so fast? Why were all the warnings brushed aside? Griffith points straight at those questions and doesn't hold back. According to a new biography by Hugo Vickers, even Queen Elizabeth advised Harry to wait at least a year before getting married. His close friend Tom Inskip told him to slow things down. Prince William also urged caution, but every voice that suggested taking a breath ended up pushed away Harry. By his own admission, cut some of these people off, treating them like obstacles instead of support. The usual explanation people accepted was simple. Harry was in love, fully convinced, and didn't want to wait. It sounded like pure romance, like he was just following his heart. But Griffith sees it very differently. She claims Meghan was love bombing, Harry carefully tapping into his emotions, recognizing his weak spots, and positioning herself as exactly what he had been missing. Harry had been open about feeling isolated, about wanting a close family, about growing up without his mother, and watching his brother build the life he wanted. In this version of events, those personal struggles weren't just background, they became a key part of how everything unfolded. Harry wanted that sense of completeness badly, he wasn't hiding it, and that kind of emotional drive can make someone more open to promises that feel real in the moment. Meghan, according to this account, matched that energy completely. She agreed with his vision, stepped right into it, and showed zero hesitation. She even went along with his idea of living in South Africa, something Harry had genuinely dreamed about for years. A quieter life, away from constant media attention, in a place he felt connected to. Griffith claims Meghan leaned into that plan hard, even browsing properties there on WhatsApp, making it all look completely real and locked in. But here's where it takes a sharper turn. Griffith suggests that any signs of a different long-term plan were kept out of sight just long enough for everything to move forward smoothly. Then there's the whole biological clock angle, and this is where things get even more intense. Griffith doesn't believe there was actual urgency behind it. Instead, she claims it was presented to Harry as a ticking clock, like time was running out and waiting wasn't an option. Harry already wanted a family badly, so when that pressure got added into the mix, it hit exactly where it would have the most impact. This lines up with something often talked about in psychology, manufactured urgency, where it feels like a door is about to slam shut, pushing someone to act fast without stepping back to question it. When something feels urgent, it comes with this idea that waiting will cost you, that you might lose your chance and never get it back. That pressure can override careful thinking, pushing someone to act first and question later. The focus shifts to making the decision fast, instead of asking whether the urgency is even real in the first place. Griffith's version of events suggests that's exactly what happened with Harry. The pressure felt real, the timeline felt tight, but the deadline itself may not have actually existed. And by the time there was any chance to step back and reflect, the wedding had already gone through. Now shift to what might be the most eye-opening part of Griffith's claims, the Oprah situation, because this detail changes how everything lines up. The Oprah Winfrey interview in March 2021 wasn't just another media moment, it flipped the entire story into a global headline overnight. What had been seen as a private family issue suddenly exploded onto the world stage, with serious allegations being made and the palace facing accusations of racism. Harry made it clear during that interview that the rift with his family was deep, no sugarcoating it, and the world was watching. Tens of millions tuned in, and even years later, people are still debating every word that was said. Now go back to 2018, the royal wedding. Oprah was there, sitting among the guests. At the time, people noticed it felt a bit unexpected. She wasn't known as a close personal friend of Harry, and the explanation was brushed off as Meghan's connections in the American celebrity world. It seemed like a small detail, nothing major, but Griffith flips that detail completely. She suggests that Oprah's presence might not have been random at all. If that invitation was tied to a future interview, if that conversation was already being considered behind the scenes, then it changes how everything looks. Think about the bigger picture she's laying out. If the move to California, the break from royal duties, and that high-profile interview were already being discussed, even loosely, before the wedding, then this wasn't just a reaction to things falling apart later on. That would mean what the public saw as a painful, last-resort decision might actually have been part of a wider plan from early on. And that hits at the core of the narrative that's been told. Because the entire argument Harry and Meghan presented rests on the idea that they were pushed out, that staying became impossible, that leaving was the only path left. But if there was already an intention to step away before things reached that breaking point, then that version of events starts to look shaky. You can't really say you were forced out of something if you were already preparing to leave. That contradiction is exactly why this claim carries so much weight. And there's even more. Reports from people close to them at the time, back when they had just started dating, before any engagement, before the relationship even went public, add another layer to the timeline Griffith is pointing at. People around them were already saying early on that the long-term plan was a move to Malibu, not Montecito, where they later ended up, but still California all the same. The exact location may have shifted over time, but the overall direction never really changed. California was always the end goal. Now layer that in with everything else being reported, and it starts to paint a very specific picture. And right alongside this, there's another story making noise this week that seems to reflect the same kind of pattern Griffith has been pointing out. According to reporting from The Sun, later backed up by The Times, Harry is said to be expecting an invitation from King Charles to spend time at Sandringham, the King's private estate in Norfolk this summer. And the key word here is expecting, not hoping, not quietly asking through official channels, but actually expecting that invitation to come his way. And the way this expectation is being delivered, not through private calls or direct conversations, but through the press, through sources close to Harry speaking to newspapers. That's a well-known move when it comes to applying pressure publicly instead of handling things quietly behind the scenes. Think about what that really looks like. Archie and Lilibet haven't been back to the UK since the Platinum Jubilee in June 2022. They haven't seen their grandfather, the King, in over 4 years. Meghan hasn't returned either since the Queen's funeral that same year. 4 years is a long stretch, especially for young kids. For a child around 6 years old, that's basically most of their clear, lived memories. Their grandfather is the King of England, and yet there's been almost no in-person connection during that time. Now, here's where it gets even more pointed. Reports suggest Harry's stance, as shared through these media leaks, is that if the king extends an invitation, then he might consider bringing his family. But there are conditions he would want to know exactly who else would be there. So if the king wants to see his grandchildren, this is the path being presented. And the way it's framed doesn't come across as subtle at all. It reads less like a simple family situation and more like a negotiation playing out in public. The message underneath feels clear. If certain expectations are met, then access follows. And this, right here, is how communication between father and son is reportedly unfolding. Griffith, who says she's seen this kind of pattern before, breaks it down in a very direct way. According to her, this follows a familiar playbook. Harry decides what he wants, leaks it through the press, and then waits for the situation to shift in a way that brings that outcome closer. It's not the first time this approach has been used, and in some cases, it's actually worked. But the big question now is whether it's going to land the same way this time. Griffith's view? Probably not. She suggests the king is fully aware of how this kind of pressure tactic plays out. And more importantly, his stance on Meghan is said to have become much firmer. Reports indicate that while King Charles may still have personal affection for Harry, the people around him are on the same page about one thing. They see Meghan as a serious complication. The message coming from that circle is blunt. If she's part of the visit, the door stays shut. If it's just Harry on his own, then there might be room to talk. That's a striking situation when you really think about it. A son potentially being told that reconnecting with his father depends on showing up without his wife, that her presence alone could block any progress toward repairing the relationship. And it goes even further. The idea that the king, who would naturally want to see his grandchildren, might hold back from extending an invitation that includes both parents. That adds another layer of tension to the whole situation. Griffith maps out a possible timeline here. First, a solo visit from Harry to Sandringham sometime this summer, opening the door to at least some level of understanding between father and son. Then later on, possibly around the Invictus Games in 2027, a broader family visit could follow. It's a slow path, but one that shows just how complicated and carefully managed this entire situation has become. Harry heading back ahead of the Invictus Games actually lines up in a strategic way. He could present it as a one-year countdown, a reminder to the public that something major is on the horizon, and a way to keep himself visible in British public life. But even that framing says a lot. Because Invictus isn't just another project, it's one of the few things Harry is tied to that carries real respect, real impact, and stands apart from all the noise surrounding the Sussex name. Without it, his image in the UK is heavily shaped by everything else. The fallout from Spare, the Oprah interview, the documentary, and those repeated moments where he openly criticized his family. That's what people remember most. Invictus works as a balance to all of that. It gives supporters something solid to point to, something positive that shifts the narrative even slightly, which means keeping it visible and making the 2027 UK return feel like a major moment, not just another scheduled event, matters a lot. Now look at how this could play out. A solo visit to Sandringham this summer could easily set the tone for a much bigger public appearance tied to Invictus the following year. But here's the catch. That plan might make sense from Harry's side, but it only works if the king goes along with it. And that's far from guaranteed. Because the invitation itself isn't Harry's to control, it belongs to Charles. And Charles is dealing with serious pressures of his own right now, balancing health concerns, the weight of the monarchy, and everything else happening behind palace doors. After everything that came out around Prince Andrew, there are growing signs that King Charles isn't someone who can be pushed into decisions he hasn't personally signed off on. That matters here because it suggests he's far less likely to respond to outside pressure or media-driven expectations. But underneath all of this, Griffith's claims about how the relationship began, the Sandringham situation, the media strategy, there's a bigger question sitting right at the center. Does Harry fully understand what's happened in his own life? And does he see how it all unfolded step by step? Griffith seems to think something is starting to shift. She says, carefully, that Harry may be beginning to wake up, that he's starting to look back at how fast everything moved, and noticing the gap between what he believed at the time and how things actually turned out. If that change is real, it's not happening loudly or publicly. There's no big statement, no clear admission, but the suggestion is that the signs are there for anyone paying close attention that Harry could be quietly reassessing everything. And that's where this story takes a serious turn, because what he does next could shape everything that comes after. If he fully comes to terms with what Griffith is alleging, that plans may have existed before the marriage, that urgency may have been pushed to speed things up, that major moments like the Oprah interview were already being lined up early, then the implications are massive. It would mean rethinking years of decisions, relationships, and public statements. It would raise questions about what he believed, what he was told, and how much control he actually had at different moments. And if he reaches that point of clarity, then the situation becomes deeply complicated on a personal level. A life that changed direction so quickly, choices that reshaped his role, his environment, and his public identity, all of it would come back into focus in a completely different way. That kind of realization doesn't stay small, it reshapes everything that comes after it. This is the version of events Griffith is putting forward, and she's not coming from the outside looking in. She's been covering these figures for years, with a level of access most reporters don't have. So when she speaks like this, it carries weight. It's not just random speculation. Now, whether Harry was actually misled is something only he can truly answer. But the picture Griffith lays out, the timeline, the idea of a preset plan, the pressure to move fast, the Oprah connection, even the South Africa angle, all of it points in a very specific direction. And it's not an easy one to dismiss. If her interpretation holds up, then the public image built over the past few years starts to shift in a big way. Because the common view has been that Harry made a tough, emotional decision for love, that he walked away after trying and failing to make things work. But if that timeline isn't accurate, if key moves were already in motion early on, then that narrative doesn't hold the same weight anymore. It becomes less about a clear personal choice and more about whether the situation was shaped behind the scenes in ways he didn't fully see at the time. And that changes the tone completely, because a story that once looked like a straightforward romance starts to feel far more complicated, with different motivations possibly driving key moments. One detail that really stands out in all of this is the South Africa claim. It's a small piece on the surface, but it hits on something more personal, because it speaks directly to trust, shared plans, and what was real versus what may have only appeared that way. Harry's wish to live in South Africa wasn't just talk, it was something real to him. This wasn't some casual idea he mentioned once and forgot about. It was a deeply held goal to step away from the spotlight, leave behind the pressure of royal life, and build something quieter with his family in a place he genuinely cared about. He had spent time there, built connections, and felt a strong pull toward that life. And according to Griffith's account, Meghan stepped right into that vision. She showed excitement, got involved, and even looked at properties through WhatsApp, making it all seem serious and completely possible. To people watching from the outside, it looked like a real plan taking shape. Nothing about it seemed fake or half-hearted. Harry, by this version of events, had no reason to doubt it. Everything pointed to that future actually happening. But Griffith claims the reality was very different. She suggests California was always the true destination, and the South Africa idea was never meant to happen. Instead, it was presented in a way that kept Harry confident, moving forward, and fully believing their shared future matched his hopes. And that's where this becomes hard to ignore. Because maintaining something like that isn't simple. It would mean keeping up the same level of excitement and detail around a plan that wasn't actually going to be followed through. Most people can barely keep up a small social act for a short time. What's being described here is something much longer, more consistent, and far more deliberate if it happened the way Griffith suggests. Think about those conversations talking about houses, neighborhoods, and the fine details of a life that, according to this version, was never actually going to happen. That's where the idea Griffith raises love bombing really comes into focus. As a concept, love bombing is all about overwhelming someone with attention, affection, and what feels like perfect alignment. It creates this intense sense that the other person just gets you completely, like they understand your values, your goals, and everything you've been missing. And for the person on the receiving end, it feels real, completely real. It doesn't come across as fake or forced. It feels like rare, almost unbelievable compatibility. Like everything just clicks into place in a way it never has before. But the key point Griffith is making is this what feels natural on the surface might not actually be organic underneath. The connection can feel effortless, but in this framing, it's being carefully shaped. The idea is that the alignment isn't accidentally happening. It's being built, that someone has paid close attention, picked up on emotional cues, figured out what matters most, and then reflected all of that back in a way that feels perfect. That's what makes it so powerful and, according to this interpretation, so effective, because it doesn't feel like manipulation when you're inside it. It feels like finding exactly what you've been looking for all along. And this kind of dynamic tends to hit hardest when someone is already in a vulnerable place. Griffith points out that Harry had been open about feeling isolated, about wanting a close-knit family, about losing his mother at a young age, and living within a system that didn't always prioritize personal emotional needs. In that context, a connection that feels complete and reassuring wouldn't just be appealing, it would be incredibly hard to question. So the real question now is, what happens next? Because if Harry really is going through the kind of realization Griffith is hinting at, does he ever reach a point where he says something publicly? Does he speak on what people around him are now believed to be thinking behind closed doors? And what about the story that's been told for years? The version where everything was about love, freedom, and breaking away from a system that didn't work. Does that story hold up if this alternative account laid out by Griffith and others keeps gaining traction? For a long time, that original narrative held strong. It connected with people emotionally, and let's be real, it's almost impossible to prove what's really happening inside a relationship from the outside. But now, things are starting to shift. More voices are speaking up, more details are coming out, and the picture forming is getting harder to ignore. Even with strong media strategy and legal backing, this may not be something that can be easily controlled anymore. So where does this all lead? That's the part no one can fully answer yet, but it's definitely a story that's still unfolding in real time. If you've made it this far, drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear what you think about all of this. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share so you don't miss what comes next.